So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, What We've Learned Helping Customers Move ERP to the Cloud and How That Can Help You. In this session, we'll be discussing the reasons how your business will benefit from Cloud ERP and what a successful migration to the cloud with Nolan looks like. So our agenda for today, we'll start with a quick introduction to who is joining us today from the Nolan team, and then we'll look at the key drivers for change, so what's pushing businesses to rethink their ERP strategy. We'll also be running through how to build a strong business case for moving to the cloud, and then explore the common challenges we see when businesses move from their legacy system. After, we'll then outline what a successful GP to AI cloud migration actually looks like, and then wrap up with how we can make things easy for you throughout your migration journey. Please feel free to ask any questions throughout the live session. If you can enter them into the chat, and we'll try and answer them as we go. If you have any left over, we'll come back to you with an answer directly over email. So who's on the call with us today? We have Mark Hennessy, our Managing Director here at Nolan, Brian Jones, our Operations Director, and myself, Sam Power, the Marketing Executive here at Nolan. So that's who we'll be presenting today, and now we'll go straight into identifying the drivers for change and ERP implementation. So I'll hand you over to Mark.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, yes, so on to the next slide. So just sort of looking at the what we see typically drives change. Why are people looking to move really? So on the next slide, Sam. So yeah, so I guess the big thing is a lot of these old systems are going into life. Obviously, a lot of you on the call on Dynamics GP, I know not all of you are, but they are going into life, so we've got to do something. I always think it's a bit of a disappointing reason to have to do it. Really, let's be more positive and look at the benefits of moving away. But the reality is, aging architecture in these systems does make things more difficult. Customizations are harder. It does lead to more manual processes. Integrations are difficult. Then it does really hinder that sort of digital transformation or sort of cloud and AI transformation, I guess more accurately these days, really. Older systems, legacy systems are harder to support. They're harder to maintain. The manual upgrades are going to be done. They're harder to remain compliant. Things like e-invoicing coming along. We already know Microsoft aren't doing that for GP. So the legacy systems aren't supporting these new things as easily. And the advantage is there's less resources out there who are able to work on the old legacy systems. All the systems also cross-training into the modern cloud ERP systems and wanting to learn that to move forward, really. So that's it's harder and harder to support the older systems. We see a lot of need for change and scalability and modern features. So things like better analytics, more automation, better mobile solutions. We're all working remotely all the time. More AI. AI won't come through in legacy on-premise systems, and AI is one of the biggest drivers, the biggest changes in ERP that we've seen since cloud came along, sort of 15, 20 years ago now. So that scalability isn't going to be met by the legacy systems. That's I think it's really driving migration into the cloud. I think integration, competitive pressures as well. So integrations tend to be a bit clunky, a bit difficult to do. The modern systems have good open APIs we can connect into, and just rework some of those integrations that may already exist or don't exist at all if you brought in other systems since you first put in the legacy ERP. So making that migration as more of a strategic choice in terms of how can we move forwards is driving change as well. Okay. So operational security pressures. So operationally, I think manual processes, inefficiencies. We still see reliance on spreadsheets, manual workflows, and things because it's difficult to change the core system. That can create individuals, dependencies on individuals. So someone's got the knowledge in their heads, and that sort of problem that generates if that person was to move on. Cloud ERP does provide really good automation, workflow engines built in, consolidated dashboards built into the system typically as well, and obviously AI in there as well. So that's another reason that customers come to us wanting these things that drive change. On-prem security risks. The reality is your on-premise system is never going to be as secure as your system hosted by Microsoft or hosted by Oracle. They're some of the biggest security companies in the world these days, these types of people. So relying on them for patching, automatic upgrades instead of manual, the backups, the disaster recovery reduces risk. And we've had, I think, 2 instances in the last year in our customer base of breaches that have brought their systems down for weeks. I think about not having your ERP for a couple of weeks. That we have seen that with a GP site in the last year. So this stuff does happen. So that sort of cloud security, compliance, enterprise grade security that offered by the likes of Oracle and Microsoft is super important these days. Okay. So building the business case for it. So what do we typically see when we go through this process, and how do people build the internal sort of business case for moving across into the cloud? So talk about that a little bit. So I think it's this sort of continuous innovation, the fact that you get automatic upgrades twice a year with either NetSuite or with Business Central in the spring and the autumn. That happens. Everyone's on the same version. You can shift the dates around a little bit, but everyone does get upgraded twice a year, so you're not stuck on an old version of the software that only gets upgraded every 4 years. It means it brings that innovation, those new features come along, improvements in the products continually. AI is moving at such a pace these days. We're seeing that get better and better almost weekly at the moment within the system. Unified business platforms. This sort of talks about bringing all the different departments, all the different areas of the system together into one system best we can, and just breaking down those sort of departmental silos that tend to exist. Cloud ERP is really good at that. Increasing efficiency, so automating approvals, reconciliations, reporting is key. Automation is a big topic we always talk about during these processes, and improving that and looking back at how things have been done in the past and how can we do them better now. Is a key part of sort of making that business case really for change. And also the migration just as a catalyst for improving decision making, productivity gains and scaling. If one of your goals is growth, then modern systems scale really easily and really quickly because of the back end architecture and that they're hosted in by the likes of Oracle and Microsoft. Okay. Financial benefits from return investment justification, obviously key for building a business case around this. So, we typically see that moving to the cloud reduces the total cost of ownership. You don't have to pay for servers, you don't have to pay for upgrades, maintenance that brings, the electricity, the power that brings running that hardware, or even if you've got it in a hosted environment, you're still going to maintain that software and pay for that hosting. So that typically lowers the total cost of ownership typically, because we haven't got to worry about any of those things. Efficiency, again, as I said, the automation coming through in the new systems, speeds up finance operational processes. So that's a really good sort of benefit and justification. Enhancing cash flow. So if you're an inventory heavy type business, or a business that relies on credit control heavily, so just improving all the cash cycles, automating more automation around things like billing and credit control. Better control of inventory, carrying less stock, reducing costs there. So we typically see enhanced cash flow around a move in a fresh system. So I think it all adds up to quite a strong financial justification to doing it typically. So we're quite good at coming up with ways to demonstrate that. We can help you with that and just show you how you can deliver measurable savings, reductions in risk, and how the system can help you support business growth. So we can certainly help with that should you want us to. Okay. So some of the challenges around that we see, and this is more sort of internal challenges really. Brian's going to talk more about the actual project delivery. I don't want to steal his thunder. I want to do this next slide. I'll try not to, Brian. So if you want to move on, Sam. So yeah, legacy customization's a challenge. So often the older systems have had a lot of work done to them over the years, and we've got to look at those. Often we don't need them anymore. So just making sure that we can still deliver that functionality though. We talk about configuration versus customization, and the modern systems are very happy to be customized. They allow it, but should you? Can we use standard functionality wherever we can? Can we change business process? And that's the area Brian will talk about. The fit gap analysis as well around that. We can look at that and see where there might be gaps between what you need and what the system does as standard, and detail that and just make sure we're really optimizing the use of the system rather than customizing too much. I think one area as techies, as accountants, we're very good at the numbers, we're very good at the technical elements. We're sometimes less good at the human element, and projects fail because we don't get buy-in, we don't get people on board, and that's a key part to the project and key part up any business case to moving away is how are we going to manage the change from the human element and get people's buy-in, get them involved, get them seeing the benefits in it. It's a key thing that's sometimes gets less priority, I think. Okay. So that internal decision making and sort of commercial challenges there. So there's always a high perceived risk. It's ERP sort of, it's there, it works. We've got to open the box. We've got to touch this thing. It's dangerous to touch. But I think what I'd say about that is we do this every day of the week. This is our day job. As clients, you might do this every 10, 20 years. But we're very good at managing that and helping you through it. A trusted partner removes a lot of that risk really. The cost concerns proving the return on investment versus sort of, well, GP works or the on-premise system we've got, it just works. So why are we touching it? So I think, we talk about those missed opportunities of that you're missing out by not moving on into a modern cloud AI-enabled system. And that's where the big changes right now really in terms of AI. Getting time from the board, getting their attention and budget assigned to a project like this it can be difficult, but I think it's that message, we can increase efficiency, automation, we can enable you to do more with less by having a more modern system that's able to automate more is key to that sort of discussion. And making sure everyone buys in, because this isn't a decision that gets made by just the finance team or just the IT team. It's everybody involved. ERP tends to touch every area of the business, so making sure we've got buy-in from all the different stakeholders and everyone's sort of on board with it goes back to the human element as well. But that's key in getting a decision made really. And that gets that through disruption goes back to the risk point, but just changing a core system to the business it will bring disruption. Is the reality, but it's worth it. The gains, the benefits you get at the end of it, it does make it worth it. So, okay. So overcoming these challenges, then, so quantifying the business sort of pain. Let's look at what we've got now. Let's have a real look at it and see what we might be making do with these things, the inefficiencies in the system. But really, what does that look like, and how much manual effort and workarounds, what delays does it cause? What is the compliance risk? What is the security risk that we've got ahead of us here? How much do the upgrades cost and so on? So just quantifying the cost of what we're currently doing, and then presenting a clear model going forward. So what is the 5-year total cost of ownership of this? How much is the payback period? We've got this big amount to pay up front to get it done. When is it going to pay us back? And what's the cost of doing nothing? Quite difficult to quantify that sometimes, but it's an important one to look at. I think linking the project to strategic goals is important as well. Where's the organisation going? Is it all about growth? Is it all about automation? Are we getting ready for M&A? Are we worrying about security? Are we looking to just acquire the best talent? And linking the project back to those goals. The talent acquisition is an interesting one because the best people in finance don't want to be working on old legacy systems. They want the latest and greatest tools to do their job. So that's I think an important point that often gets overlooked. Reducing risk, so a low risk roadmap. Brian will talk more about this, but just improving methodologies, doing the project, and just some real case studies of success with these projects that we can help with. And that cross departmental support, getting buy-in across the whole board, and just reducing rejections there. So those are the sorts of things that we see internal stakeholders going through to get these projects underway really. Okay, so with that, I'll hand over to Brian. Brian's our ops director, as Sam said earlier. Brian's been working for us for 6 years or more as project manager, and now our operations director. So he's been very hands-on with these projects. He's worked both partner side and customer side, so he's seen these projects from both ends and brings a huge amount of experience and knowledge to these projects. So Brian, I'll hand over to you. You're on mute, Brian. How times have we said that the last few years?
God dear, sorry about that. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Okay, so just building on what Mark's already talked about in the webinar so far, we're going to look at some of the insights around what makes a successful cloud migration project. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the insights that we've gained over the years of doing these implementations. As Mark said, this is our day job. We've done quite a few of them now. So just sort of starting out, really looking at what we've learned, and this is a very condensed version. There's lots of other things underneath this, but the main sort of messages really are, it's not really the technology, it's more about the data. And what I mean by data is the data that's being transferred to the new system and the data that's needed by the business. Those processes come up sort of time after time in terms of being clear about what those processes are, and wherever possible trying to use the processes in those new modern ERP systems. And also this idea of adoption and managing the change, which requires people. The really successful projects have this well thought out at the start, identifying those key stakeholders that are going to be involved in the project and making sure that they are kind of contributing to it. I mean, we find that the most successful migrations are a real collaborative effort between the Nolan team and the customer. These implementations don't happen to you, they are with you, and we work very closely on that, and that seems to work in terms of the communication channels and also the end game. The biggest challenges, which you won't be surprised about, are really the things that come along from GP, so all the historical stuff, some of the existing customizations, some of the existing data and legacy data that's in the system that's no longer used potentially, and also integrations as well as another big area where clients bring or need existing integrations modified for those new ERP platforms, and that is where most of our sort of challenges lie in the actual migration process. Okay, so I'm now going to sort of drill down a little bit deeper and start looking at sort of the insight side of things. So the first one, and we always, when we talk about migration projects with customers, we always start with data and the data quality type things. And it is fair to say that it has one of the biggest impacts in the project, which is why we try and bring it to the, to the start. In particular with GP, a lot of the existing GP structures don't map cleanly into the ERP, so there has got to be an exercise around understanding the data that's in the actual target system and how it maps to what you've got in GP. That's something that we spend a fair bit of time sort of working through. The GP schema is quite fragmented in comparison, so there's some kind of mapping across where the data is in the actual structure itself. And you'll find that there are fields that are required in some of these ERP systems that are not in the GP system. So there's always an exercise of trying to, fill in those with either default values or, deriving the fields from the data itself. So there's a big mapping exercise from target to destination, effectively. We do have also in GP sometimes some undocumented custom fields. So you probably know all of them who've used GP that they've got some free text fields where I've even seen some clients, they'll put 4 or 5 bits of data in one free text field and separate it because they're struggling with where to store it in the system. That obviously presents problems when you're doing extraction and then having to look at where that needs to then go into the main system itself. And then the last point on there is really looking at historical data. I know some of you will have had your systems for many years and obviously need to keep historical data. We would talk through with you in terms of how that needs to be transformed and whether that sits outside of your ERP system but is accessible for you. It's often a large conversation point when we talk about the scope of the data in the project, whether how much historical data you bring with you. We normally recommend 12 months sort of trial balance and open transaction type information, but we have worked on some projects where customers have asked for more. What it does though is just add a lot of cost and processing into the project itself, but it can be achieved. We also have other solutions like data storage and data lakes where data can be easily referenced and sometimes even presented in the new ERPs as well. So we can give you kind of screens in the ERP that present some of this data to get around that. So data is a big focus, and it's important that we kind of work through those sort of information up front, really. Okay, Sam, next one. Mark touched on this a little bit in terms of customizations. I'm sure many of you will have had with your existing GP system lots of different scripts in the system itself. You'll probably have a bit of VBA. You'll probably have some third-party add-ons in there as well. And a lot of these things, when we get into the detail of them, they often work around sort of broken processes, as we call them, where the compromises have been made and we've had to use things to add on to make things work. Again, some of those, as we go through the project, we'll need to look at how we unpick those and try and map it to the new ERP processes. And I think this change of system is where we see these gaps, And we always advise customers to start at the position where they're going to adopt the new ERP process before doing the customization. I mean, both Oracle and Microsoft have got something like 40,000 customers on these products with very standard work streams and work processes. Now, not going to pretend that it will always fit everybody, and there will probably be some customization, but keeping that down to an absolute minimum is better for the project, and it often gives a better result as well because you're using the native functionality. The third point on this slide is a key problem or key mistake that some customers make, is what they try and do is just build their old system in the new one. That often derails projects. It often leads to additional costs. So one of the things that we encourage in this area is for us to look at what the core system does out of the box and then see where the gaps are, and work from what the system does rather than trying to sort of say, well, it does it like this in GP, therefore we need to make it do that in NetSuite or in Business Central. And the biggest value in this area is about simplification. And I know it's not straightforward. There are some difficult decisions to make on simplification. Looking at what you're doing, making sure it's still something that you need to do. We've often seen processes where they've been built up over many years and some of the steps in them aren't really needed anymore, but just because we've done it that way all the time, they're maintained, and they may not need to be. So anything you can get, the value of going to a new ERP is an opportunity really to grasp that simplification and make those processes better. Mark talked about things like automation and things like that as well. They're all big motivations in terms of trying to make those processes work best. But at the end of the day, it's about your business process. So we do need to make sure that it supports what your business actually needs. Okay, next slide. Integrations are another big area, and they're often more complicated than people will realize or expect when we start out. We've had recent examples of this where we've had a very simple, on the face of it, very simple requirement for a customer to import purchase orders and process those purchase orders through the system. But when we get into the detail of it, those purchase orders need to come in, and they had a process where they actually gave out the PO number and then needed to go back in afterwards and add all the detail. So that meant we needed to add an additional leg to update the PO that went into the system. They also wanted the option to vary VAT across different types of lines that go in on purchase orders. So you get into the detail of it, it often uncovers quite a lot of logic that's not there, obviously, from the original speccing side. So we do spend a fair bit of time mapping out how the integrations work. As Mark said, the Cloud ERPs are very open, the APIs. They've got event-driven workflows in them. So they just need to make sure that we design and map to those and utilize those. So it means easier maintenance going forward as well. And then the other thing about integrations is the impact really on upstream and downstream data. Does it need to go back to the old system or the other system that's integrating? And also, do you need to update some stuff in the existing ERP to put that data in? So integrations, we try and treat these as a proper work stream. And again, it would be something that we'd prioritize because they may well need some development time. They may not just be configuration. Okay, next slide, Sam. So Mark also touched on this. This change management drives adoption. It is really important when we're setting up projects that we've got a team and on the customer side. It doesn't have to include a project manager, although that can be really helpful in terms of organizing the resources, but it does need to have those key departments represented. As Mark talked about before, obviously finance is very key, IT, operations, sales, those sort of groups. And what we've found working with customers is identifying that upfront and putting some effort into that does pay huge dividends in the project later on. Often users have got quite a few years of using GP and of a particular way of doing it, so we need to use our training and our showing them the system in order to be able to kind of show them the way that the new systems work. And this role-based training is very important to the redesign processes as well. So once we've redesigned them, making sure that when we're doing the training that we're taking all of those people that are involved in the process and they're doing their bit in it and they understand where that all fits together. We also recommend the super user, because the super user really is the person in your organization that will have the most knowledge about the new system. We do recommend some training before we get into the actual project as well. So learning a little bit about the ERP, so how NetSuite and Business Central is set up, the core principles. I'm not talking about detail, but the core principles of how the system works is very useful in the project. If you've got someone on the business side can then translate how the new system works with how their business process works, that's really important. And then giving that super user that sort of, you know, empowerment to make some of the decisions around how those processes are going to be worked and adopted. So that's in project. They're also very useful super users after the project finishes in what we call stabilization. So when you go live, it's not a straightforward sort of cut go live. There's always a bit of work that needs to be done after the initial go live happens. So if you've got people in your organization that know the system very well and know your business process very well, that can be really critical in terms of giving you a smooth transition through the process. Okay, Sam, next one. Testing wise, it's always something that can be underplayed quite significantly. We do some testing on our side, on the system side of things, but obviously we don't know your business as well as you. So it's really important. One of the other things is that the testing has got a lot of involvement from the business, and in fact business led. So those end-to-end scenarios and use cases in the system are kind of uncovered and tested so that we don't encounter those issues when we go live. Even something basic like month end, testing how the month end process works can be very important in terms of your kind of transition to the new system. So we spend a fair bit of time looking at what testing's needed and making sure that you've got all your kind of involvement in that side of it. It also needs to be resourced appropriately. UAT is seen as a bit of a necessary evil sometimes, a bit of a checkbox exercise. People don't like doing it necessarily, but it is really important and valuable. And we found that, you know, if you can find issues before go live, it just makes it so much easier to fix them, and so much less cost involved in fixing them as well. So that UAT exercise is really important. And sometimes doing the testing, I mean, one of the things that we do is walkthroughs with clients. So before we actually get into the testing, we would walk through transactions with you in the system and show you how the system works. That can also uncover things where processes aren't quite right, or the ownership's not quite right, or further training is going to be needed. So we tend to make sure that the testing is very close to any of those kind of walkthroughs and training, so users have the appropriate knowledge to be able to execute that in the best way, really. And obviously we resource it heavily as well in terms of making sure that we're available to do fixes and changes to the system as required. So that's the testing side of things. Thanks, Sam. So this was the point I was sort of touched a little bit on earlier about this go live. So it's a journey. Go live is a transition into the new system. It's not the end of the process. And what we typically find with the projects that we've worked on is that there's a period of time where that what we call stabilization, so getting used to what the new system's doing and how it's working, that tends to be 60-90 days of that happening, doing a couple of month ends and that kind of thing to sort of work through how the system is behaving. And it's quite normal to have some productivity gaps, from a planning perspective. Some dips in productivity are normal, but they are temporary. We do have, the first month end, for example, is a typical one. It will take a little bit longer on your new system when you first start, but then what we do find is it very quickly recovers, and often there's a benefit there if it's set up correctly. And the other thing that's perhaps a little bit new about the cloud ERPs to GP is that you will be seeing lots of updates to the system. It's got a roadmap of changes. In the Oracle world, that's twice a year. In the BC world, it's more frequent, where new features are being released. Obviously, AI is driving a lot of those things, and we would be, our support team have got a function there where they help with explaining what those new features are. There may be some testing that you need to do in order for those new features to be delivered in the system, but this is a continuous moving ERP platform, and there are things being added, functionality being added all the time. So there just needs to be some provision for that, moving forward. Okay, Sam, next one. So just summarizing some of this stuff up really into, one slider, if you like, of what successful migrations look like, working with Nolan. Start that data work early. We talked about the data, about mapping. There'll be a bit of cleansing in there as well of the data. Some of the fields in GP haven't got the same data constraints that they have in the ERPs, like making sure those email addresses are appropriately put together and got all the right components in them. So that's one area. Also, chart of accounts is another big thing in terms of data work. What we find is that's normally the first thing that we focus on when we're moving to the new ERP, is getting that financial structure sorted and bedded down. So starting work on making sure that that's appropriately formatted and you've got that up to date. Making sure you know what your customizations are and your processes are, so having some kind of catalog of that. So when we get into the project, we can quickly identify the areas that we may need to work on in terms of customization. I mean, customization is not a problem. We can customize these platforms, as Mark said, and there are tools available to do it. But we try where possible to, deliver the first pass, deliver the standard functionality. Embrace the standard processes instead of recreating GP. Yeah, I definitely would recommend that. So be open to the fact that we're probably going to change some of the business processes through this journey as well, and adopt that practice in the new ERP. Invest in that change management and training for adoption. That's obviously we can change the system over, but if the users aren't going to use it or they're not going to adopt it in the right way, then you're not going to get the return on investment that you want. So making that investment up front is pretty important. The other thing is clear process owners and decision makers in the project. We have a structure where we do steerco meetings with these during these migration projects, and it's important to have people on those steercos that can make decisions about the process and direction of the project. So having those clearly identified up front and having that team around is very important in terms of the progress that we can make by having that. And treat your reporting and integrations as important work streams. That often get forgotten. That, as I said earlier, we had a slide about integrations, about how they can become more complicated. So important to bring those back up to the top of your kind of scoping and make sure that we've got the appropriate resources and time in the project for those as well. So yeah, so those are the key things that we've learned by helping a lot of customers move from those legacy platforms onto the new modern ERPs. Okay, thank you. Back over to you, Mark, to talk about the migrating to the cloud with Nolan.
Thanks, Brian. I'm just actually had a question, and before we move on to that, might be worth just picking up on this. Do we recommend migration at year end to get a clean data in each system? Does it not make a big difference? Brian, do you want to?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to have a really good sort of reference point for doing the sort of cutover process. Some customers do year end, although it's not necessarily it has to be that. As long as it's at the end of a period, I think that's the main thing. And some organisations have quarterly period ends and things like that. So it's looking at really what's going to work for you. We can do it just month end, or we can do year end as well. The most important thing is that it's the right time for your business, and then we've got a very clean cutover point where we know that the data was obviously processed in the old system at that point, and now it's switched over to the new. So it's really having a clean changeover point.
What I'd add to that is it's sort of an obvious time to do it year end, but sometimes it's the worst time for the finance team who are thinking about audit and year end accounts and wrapping up the year. So they don't always have the time and resource to do it. Ideally, I think it's a good time, but practically it's not always the best, is it? It just depends, really.
No. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Next slide then Sam, we'll talk about migrating to the cloud with Nolan, what that might look like, really. So a little bit about us at Nolan, if you don't already know, really, but we've been doing this a long time, founded in 1988, so it's 38 years this year, October. We've been working on cloud migrations for 17 years when we first took on NetSuite. We're a little bit different to some partners in that we do have quite a big development team at Nolan's. We also write add-on modules for all the products for NetSuite, Business Central, and for GP, obviously. So we've got a big development team that does give us the ability to customize and to build complex additional solutions around the system should you need them, as much as we try and keep you on standard wherever we can do it, and are more willing and able to do that. We do tend to get involved in some quite complex projects as well. 1,300 customers worldwide. We have a US office, US subsidiary that sell our products out in North America, as well as the core team in the UK. All of our support and technical resources is UK based though. Qualified technical resources is important to us, so I'm a big advocate for making sure our consultants, our developers are properly trained, properly accredited with Oracle, with Microsoft, and we push hard on getting people through those qualifications and through those exams. The software changes every day. We have to stay up to date and keep our resources properly trained and properly knowledgeable on the software. We have dedicated support teams, development team, consultancy team, project management. Training tends to fall into consultancy. But there are individual teams that work closely together to deliver the whole project around that. That's how we sort of arrange ourselves. We're very proud of the Best Place to Work certifications we have. We have it for tech, for development, and for women. We get that accredited every year. So that's a really good sort of measure as to how happy our employees are. So we're proud to have that for a relatively small company. We work hard to maintain a good culture. A motivated team. So, next slide, Sam. So just briefly on the two products, and there's only sort of one slide on each. So we do obviously Business Central, we do Oracle NetSuite, and we do this sort of head-to-head NetSuite versus BC type theme really. But just to give you the sort of headlines on each of the products. So with Business Central, we talk about the sort of Microsoft advantage that it brings. It's got the Microsoft logo, it's got the best integration to Microsoft 365, best integration with Teams, with Excel, with Word, all those sorts of things as you'd expect, I guess. With Copilot is ingrained throughout Business Central, getting better and better with the new purchasing agent, with the new sales order agent that they're rolling out, and various other things that we'll see in the next release. Really user-friendly interface. It's not difficult to get around it. It's Microsoft, so you tend to sort of know it. And it's cheaper than NetSuite. It has a lower total cost of ownership, but it's not doing as much. It hasn't got an inbuilt CRM the same way NetSuite has. It doesn't have case management and some of these other things around the edges that NetSuite has. So NetSuite's sort of a bigger product, really, but it comes with a bigger cost. So it's the difference between the two. So this is NetSuite. One of the key sort of benefits of NetSuite is the one more consolidation. So if you have multiple subsidiaries that you need to consolidate from a financial perspective, or even from a sales perspective, or just data reports, credit reports, those things, the consolidation does run through the whole system. So the one more module is a key differentiator with it, and most other systems really. Not to say you can't do it, Business Central you can, but it's just not as slick and as inbuilt as it is with NetSuite. NetSuite has this suite success approach, so they ship sort of pre-configured NetSuite accounts for different verticals, so wholesale distribution or not-for-profit or project-based business services type businesses or whatever, and we tend to build upon those sort of standard practices that NetSuite's already built into the system. So that's a slightly different implementation approach. It includes a CRM system. BC doesn't really, has some basic stuff, but not as depth in as much depth as NetSuite does. The embedded analytics and reporting is probably better in NetSuite. It's more comprehensive, as there are various different ways you can get reporting within the core system without having to go external. BC does have good internal reporting, but doesn't go quite as far. And the AI of NetSuite, they talk about NetSuite Next, which is what's coming along really with NetSuite, and it's similar with Oracle AI built into the platform with agents and all different things in there as well coming through. So which we're starting to see through. But as I say, it comes at a higher price point than with Business Central. So just two slides giving some just headline differentiators between the two. But I think as Nolan's, we're the leading partner doing both systems, and we don't really mind which one people go for. It's which one fits your business, fits your set of requirements the best, and we can give impartial advice around that. Okay, so trying to make things a bit easier for you. So some of you, because the next slide, some of you would have met Gary already. We can talk to your account manager or to me. We'll help you through this process. But Gary is coming as well as a cloud migration specialist. He's hugely experienced in ERP in general, in NetSuite and Business Central, knows both systems really well. So you can get in touch and help go through this process. And just the bar across the bottom, really, it sort of starts with discovery. We'll come along, we'll talk about what you need, what you're doing at the moment, what type of business are you, and so on, what type of organization are you. That typically leads into a demo of the software where we'll mock up what the system might look like before you come back and show you in the new system. If all's going well, we lead on to a statement of work, get contract sign off, and then hand over to Brian's team to actually get the project delivered. So it's typically what that sort of process looks like from starting point through to end. So there's a fair bit of work to do to get through it all. But Gary and your account manager or myself, we can all help you through that process. Okay.
Okay.
Back to you, Sam, I think.
Thanks, Mark. Yep, so that's it from us today. This will be made available for you to watch on demand if you'd like to revisit anything from the session, and we'll get that link sent out to you shortly. If you have any further questions after the webinar, please reach out to us using our contact information on the screen. We'll also be exhibiting in May at Accountex, so if you fancy attending, it'd be great to see you there. And yeah, hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.